It seems I had already forgotten how people were at university, that's why I look like this and not like that. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is, as already mentioned, Ville-Veikko Pulkka, and I work as a researcher at the Social Security Institution of Finland, Kela. Kela is leading the basic income experiment study and also pays the current basic security benefits to people. I know that Jani-Petri Laamanen has already talked about this topic for you earlier, but I think I will concentrate on slightly different aspects today. So firstly, I will talk shortly about the background for the experiment study. Secondly, I concentrate on the essential findings and recommendations of the research group that I'm also a part of. And finally, I will talk a little bit about some obstacles we still had to tackle in order to launch the experiment in January 2017. Before I go any further, I want everybody of you know that according to our current planning, the basic income experiment will be carried out in 2017, 2018, and it should last 2 years if everything goes right. And then assessment of the result is planned to done in 2019. I will come to this at the end of my presentation, but the reality may be slightly different. I'm not sure how familiar you are with basic income discussion in Finland, but it can be said that the idea, at least, has been discussed since the 1970s. And I would say last 10 years the idea has gathered more and more advocates, even though still the bigger parties have not been advocating for basic income. It's been mostly the Green League and the Left Alliance that have been mostly advocating for this idea. And I would say it is fair to know that before the reference was made to this experiment in the governmental program of Prime Minister Juha Sipilä's governmental program, in my opinion, basic income was not considered as a politically feasible option. I'm not sure how many international students we have today here, but I guess most of you know that the Finnish welfare state, the Nordic welfare states in general, are based on the principle of universalism. Even though this principle, still most of the benefits are means tested, so the principle of unconditionality has not been as important as the universalism. So how do we see this principle of universalism in Finland? It's you can see it via the extensive social security and free or quasi-free public services. And one reason why basic income has not gathered too many advocates during the last decades, I would say one quite crucial reason for this is that social democratic welfare state has always been and still is a work-oriented society. And what has happened since the mid-90s is the so-called activation policy. It has been international trend that politicians have been pursuing policies which has meant more stricter sanctions and also obligations, especially for unemployed people. And I would say this is why just few expected a basic income experiment to be launched by a center-right coalition government. So what we have done our study, it bases on the assignment handed down by the Prime Minister's office. And what we were asked to do was produce a detailed description of the basic income models suitable for the experiment and also determine the level of basic income for these models. We were also asked to propose how to integrate earnings-related benefits and different types of basic social security benefits in the basic income. Also, taxation is an important part of basic income reform. When we are doing a basic income reform, it doesn't mean just consolidating social security, but it means also, usually it means reform in taxation system. In more general level, we were also asked to determine the strengths and weaknesses of the different basic income models, and also considering constitutional aspects and the EU law. And we also recommended a well-thought proposal for a basic income model. And then in April, politicians made some decisions on it and told us how to continue. So this assignment handed down by the Prime Minister's office, it also outlined 4 different options which we needed to explore and develop. The first option was so-called full basic income. Shortly it means that the level of basic income would be high enough to replace almost all other benefits, perhaps excluding earnings-related benefits, because for example, unemployment benefits which are earnings-related can be at quite high level, let's say 1,700 euros a month could be the average. Secondly, we were asked to study on partial basic income. Usually when people talk about basic income in Finland, they mean namely partial basic income. This is a model which could replace the most of the basic security benefits. For example, basic social assistance, basic unemployment benefit, labor market subsidy, etc. Third model, which we studied, was negative income tax. Again, I'm not sure how familiar you are with this idea, but it's kind of basic income paid via taxation system. We studied also a new British social security system called universal credit, and also participation income, but due to the conditionality of these systems, we didn't recommend these for our government. So if you read this assignment, it is quite difficult to find some specific targets our government is having. There's one thing, and the one thing is diminishing disincentives in social security. In other words, increase employment this way. I would say that's a good target, since we truly have an unemployment problem in Finland currently. The unemployment rate in Finland is 10.1% in March 2016, according to these latest statistics. One thing I would like to also emphasize is that even though basic income is unconditional by definition, I would say it's still continuation, at least this specific experiment. It's still a political continuation of the activation policies pursued since the mid-90s. The target is the same, to increase employment by emphasizing labor supply. So, in my view, this basic income experiment is not a paradigm shift. We can see that at the same time government is implementing also new sanctions and obligations in social security. So when we want to diminish or remove disincentives in social security, we are quite often talking about so-called traps in social security. This results from the fact that currently a number of means-tested benefits are paid in addition to each other. The so-called economic disincentives are called unemployment traps and income traps, and then more psychological disincentives are usually called bureaucracy traps. Just a moment. I guess Jani-Petri Lammen has talked something about labor supply and perhaps also these indicators, so I will just go quite fast with this through. So these economic disincentives first. Unemployment traps, or trap means situation when a person have economic disincentive to participate in labor markets. Indicator for these traps are called participation tax rates, and when this is higher than 80%, you are considered to be in an unemployment trap. So this percent means just that how many percent your gross salary is diminished by taxes, lost benefits, and earnings-related service charges, for example, daycare charges in Finland, if you start to work. Secondly, we can also talk about income traps, which mean a situation when a person has economic disincentives to increase workload. Indicator for this trap is so-called effective marginal tax rate, and when this is higher than 70%, a person is considered to be in an income trap. So it means basically how many percent that your gross salary is diminished if you increase your workload. Economists usually consider unemployment traps more crucial, so that's why I'm also showing you just participation, some tables of participation tax rates in basic income schemes. Thirdly, we can also talk about these psychological disincentives, which are usually called bureaucracy traps. So due to the means-tested benefits, there are delays reporting, and in worst-case scenarios, even falling through the social security net. These bureaucracy traps can be, and also these economic disincentives can be quite harsh for people who would like to work as part-time basis or go into self-employment. I show this slide just quickly, and this is just what you can find in our preliminary study that was published on 30th March 2016. For your information, the English version or 78 pages of preliminary study will be published in English this week, so I guess that will help the people who doesn't know any Finnish. Before I go to the recommendations and essential findings of our research group, I would like to show you this slide, which shows you the support for a basic income scheme or schemes in Finland. Kela had a survey in September 2015, and it was asked, do you think that the basic income scheme would be a good idea to implement? As we can see here, 69.3% of people considered basic income either good or very good idea. Then in a later survey that was carried out in October or November, I guess, we combined some partial basic income models with some flat rate taxes, and then something happened. Support collapsed. This tells something, but of course there are some limitations in this survey. I would say most of the people don't perhaps understand that these persons which are at quite high level for sure would not be that high if you talk about the effective taxation. So if you combine the basic income that you receive plus this taxation, the effective to real taxation would be pretty much at the same level or even at lower level than currently. Then just quickly some micro simulations by Pertti Honkanen and Miska Simanainen. Here we can see some calculations based on real data, flat rate tax levels, the effects on income distribution, and also on poverty. Shortly, we can see that the higher the level of basic income, less poverty and more equal income distribution. And perhaps the slightly problematic thing is when we base this calculation just on income taxation, so we don't put any additional parts like environmental taxes, the taxation level will be at quite high level. So then the essential findings of our preliminary study. It was quite clear from the beginning that full basic income might be or is too expensive even to test, since the flat rate taxes would be at quite high level, 60% for 1,000 euros basic income and even 79% for 1,500 euros basic income. Negative income tax might have been the most politically feasible option to test, since it's not paid to everyone, just for the people who cannot earn enough money by working themselves. So it is kind of having some conditionality, even though the minimum income is guaranteed to everyone. Most of the people who are advocating basic income are saying that the basic income would always make work pay. But if we stick with this budget neutral basic income, which means that no one's net income is allowed to change drastically, it's not true. So budget neutral partial basic income does not automatically remove the economic disincentives. This results from two things. Of course, the microsimulations are based on just income taxation, but also replacing housing allowance, additional social assistance and earnings related benefits is really difficult. So, in fact, if we want to strengthen the work incentives, it either costs or means diluting the current level of social security. We could, of course, apply a progressive taxation for all basic income models, but that these would not be budget neutral versions. And the wish of the government currently is that we need to, or at least try to, keep the modeling budget neutral. But then, what I consider interesting in the experiment is the effect of bureaucracy traps. And of course, we cannot remove all the bureaucracy in our social security, but a lot of problems could be solved. It would mean less delays reporting and falling through the social security net. And in my view, this removing some of these bureaucracy traps may have even bigger effect on employment than just the economic incentives. So here in this table, we see some participation tax rates, so how much people would lose if they start working. Here's this so-called simple case, so a person living alone. I think it's in Helsinki area, this example. Here we can see the current legislation, and here basic income with 550, flat rate tax, plus current progressive. So when I say that we can diminish economic disincentives, if it costs, it means that the current progressive, if we applied current progressive taxation, of course these persons would look much better in comparison to the current situation. But the problem is that this model would cost, or the budget deficit would be 11 billion euros, and I don't think that our government is interested to test this kind of model in the times of austerity and cutting some current benefits. Then again, if you are working as a part-time basis, then the situation currently is actually better than if you started working in a basic income scheme. So the long story short, basic income, again the same story. Basic income does not automatically remove or diminish the basic work disincentives. In this so-called difficult case, lone parent living in Helsinki area, this is actually always the example when mostly economists, I'm by the way a social scientist, but when economists are talking about work disincentives, they usually take this example of a lone parent living in Helsinki area, because this kind of person can get many child compensations in current social security. Also the housing allowance are quite high level, and of course if you want to make work pay in this kind of situation, it would mean much more comprehensive reforms in social policy and taxation. Just basic income itself, at least if it's budget neutral, it cannot improve the situation that much. But of course, again, if we would apply the current taxation, then these numbers would look better than in the current situation. So then the recommendations of the research group. We are recommending two-pronged or two-stage and compulsory randomization. The first priority would be nationwide sample, which would produce representative sample, which would be representative sample, and also produce generalizable results. So when people are advocating for just regional experiments, it's complicated, and I would say it's not the wisest thing to do if we have limited budget. But of course, this nationwide sample could be combined with more intensive regional sample for examining externalities, which means that we would see how if people behave differently when more than just a few people are receiving basic income in some certain area. Also, weighted sample is possible if politicians think that okay, we want to study this special group, then we could of course have a weighted sample and study how this special group behaves in comparison to the current situation. We have of course test group, but we need to have also control groups when we are launching the basic income experiment. This is of course challenging because it's, as everybody can imagine, it's not that simple to find two people who have exactly the same socioeconomic situation, or even same attitudes, or other things that may affect on your behavior. Well then, according to our power calculations, it seems that we need a sample of 10,000 people in order to observe statistically significant results if employment changes 2 percentage points, which is quite much in my view. The problem here is that 20 million euros budget for 2 years suffices just for 4,800 people, and this is also with the condition that we can use the current basic security benefits as a basis for the budget. So the benefits that which Kela is paying currently. If we want to guarantee that we get statistically significant results, bigger budget would be, of course, necessary. We don't know yet. It may be possible that government or some other organizations are willing to invest on this study, but we will see. And of course, studying the entire adult population, excluding pensioners, would be reasonable and especially scientifically reasonable. But due to the limited budget we have, we recommend it to focus on low-income earners and also exclude people under 25 years old. Why these people under 25 years old may be more expensive for us is that there are a lot of people, let's say 18 to 20 years old, who are living at home, and if we can use the current basic security benefits as a basis, these people, these 18 to 20 years old people, would cost more for us since they don't receive any benefits normally. I have heard also some moralistic arguments why to exclude people under 25, but in my view, I consider it quite non-scientific argument to say that the unconditional money itself would exclude somebody. Of course, young people may need some more support and different kind of services to, especially if the people are outside employment and education, but still that argument is not on that reliable basis. So here just one other graph by economist called Jouko Verho. It shows us that it's actually in Finnish, but when I said it seems that we need about approximately 10,000 people in order to get statistically significant results. If we had 5,000 people, the change should be 5,000, and if it's under 5,000 people, the sample, then we can see that the change in employment should be quite dramatic. So more recommendations. Most of the newspapers were writing that we are recommending 550, and that's it. But we actually recommended minimum 550 per month. We came to this amount since it corresponds to the monthly net level of many of the basic security benefits provided by Kela. This is actually not true, since according to our new calculations, for example, the net level of labor market subsidies is around 590 euros. So after this new called fact, we decided this week, I guess, last week, because it's Monday, last week, that it would be better to have the minimum level at 600 euros a month plus child compensation, because the current benefits, for example, unemployment benefits, include this kind of child compensation. Child compensation would be, for example, 100 euros per child. We still need some more calculations and micro simulations, but I'm quite sure that we will stick with this model from beginning now. So this model, what we recommended, it would not replace earnings, related benefits, housing allowance, or additional social assistance. And in an ideal situation, there would be different levels of basic income and also tax rates. This was also the situation in the experiments in the US in the 60s and 70s. I think I shared an article by Carl Wiederquist that if you if you are more interested in these experiments in the US in the 60s and 70s, I highly recommend this article. So the ideal research setting could look like this. I say once again that we have not decided the final models or models, but this is an example how it could look like. So there would be, let's say, 2 different levels, and then at least 2 different tax rates for each models. And of course, why not? We could also test the current taxation with some basic income, if we really want to see what would happen when people have really good economic incentives to work. Then legal preconditions are of course a thing that we need to take into consideration. Most importantly, the Constitution of Finland and the principle of non-discrimination. Even though we recommend this, the reality may be that we cannot test different models, since it might be not equal according to the Constitution. The Constitution may also set some conditions for the sampling, which means that we are not sure if we can really launch an obligatory experiment. I guess everybody understands if it's based on voluntary basis, the results might be really biased, since just the people who are for basic income would join the test. The Finnish constitution is also guaranteeing the right to basic subsistence, which means diluting the current level of social security is probably not possible. This would of course strengthen the work incentives, but also it would increase poverty and income hardship, so that's why we don't recommend this way. And in the last resort, it's not us or government, it will be the constitutional committee that decides if we can even launch the experiment in January 2017. According to our lawyers and experts of constitutional issues, aim of assessing reforms regard for societal improvements may, I want to emphasize may, constitute an acceptable justification for deviating from the principle of non-discrimination. When we are talking about constitution, it's always this kind of situation, everything is related, you never know what's the deal in the end. This basic income experiment must be also studied in the light of the EU law, which means that we need to study if basic income, if you can export basic income when you move to another European Union country. And also we have been studying when a person will be eligible for basic income when moving to Finland. I would say these are more political questions, since in real world the change would not be that drastic. People would still have the right to get the Finnish social security, also basic income, but it would not change the things that drastically that it would incentivize the people to move to Finland straight away. Then also some other challenges, and I would say these are the current challenges we are facing. And actually, when I said in the beginning that the reality may be different, if we can really launch the experiment in 2017, these are the reasons for that. So if we want to launch an experiment on any human issue or social policy issue, it must be based on a law. And the tricky thing at the moment is that the law should be written by the end of June 2016. Which means that we should also know all the specific details and also the parameters which are part of our basic income model. So what do we have? 1.5 months or not even that. And why this is a little bit annoying for us researchers is that these more specific proposals were requested to be presented in the final report, which is due on 15 November 2016. So we kind of lost 5 months like this. That's life. And of course, there are also other issues we still need to tackle, or obstacles we need to tackle. Kela needs to build a new payment platform for basic income, and most of our ICT experts are now working with the reform which will move social assistance from municipalities to Kela, and this takes to most of the resources we have in Kela currently. We need to also negotiate with the Finnish tax administration that if it's possible even to build a new taxation until January 2017. Currently it seems that it may not be possible, even though we had a lot of money, and just if we say that just do it, we pay whatever you ask. And of course, both this new payment platform and also this new taxation models or taxation modules requires specific details on the model or models. And this is why I'm not sure how official this is, but it's good that this is recorded, so it will be on YouTube. But we are planning a soft pilot currently that it might be easier to start with a smaller group of people, let's say people who are getting, for example, labor market subsidy, and then payment and taxation might be possible to do manually. So perhaps we didn't need to push all our energy to this scientifically more ambitious experiment yet. But in any case, even though we were just having this kind of soft pilot in January 2017, we still have this obstacle to tackle. So anyway, the law needs to be written, and according to one authority who was working at the Social and Health Ministry, he was saying that it is going to be the same work. So actually I don't know right now what will happen. If you ask on Friday, I may know more. Also, as I mentioned earlier, a bigger budget would be necessary if we want to guarantee statistically significant results. We will get for sure some results, but then if our target, of course, as researchers, is to launch as reliable research as we can do, but this kind of research project is of course affected by politics and also wishes by the current government. Duration. It is clear that an experiment of 2 years cannot reveal universal truth about the nature of basic income. We will know more about basic income, but still it would be a crucial mistake to say that after this experiment we can either choose to implement basic income or choose not to implement the basic income scheme. So, Is basic income worth the experiment? I have mentioned many issues that are problematic in scientific sense, but still I would say basic income is worth the experiment. Of course, the starting point for me is that according to Finnish empirical studies, we know that the effect of removing work disincentives, economic disincentives, the effect on the elasticity of labor supply is relatively moderate. However, I think just an experiment is the only way to have reliable results on this issue, especially in a basic income scheme. And at the same time, we are not studying just the basic income scheme. We might also get or produce better labor supply estimates for assessing other future reforms if we can launch this kind of ideal research thing that I was showing you earlier. And even though government's main target is see the effects on employment, I would say that there are also other important indicators which should be studied. For example, health is a big issue, also subjective well-being. And when we do this kind of study on basic income, we can also get some new data for the microsimulation models. So now when we are doing these microsimulations, they're based on a static situation, so we don't really know what would happen if people change their behavior. Politically, I think this experiment is also promising because it's promoting evidence-based policies. This could change the political culture in a way that in the future politicians would more rely on scientific facts or truths. Well, it can be also said that there has been a lot of research before this new target of promoting evidence-based policies, but at least now it is said straight that in the future we really do want to hear what the researchers have to say on certain issues. What is slightly interesting is that, for example, in Switzerland, where they are going to have a referendum on basic income on 5th June 2016, and also especially in the USA, the possible threat of technological unemployment and technological change has been the main reason for the renaissance of basic income discussion. And if you follow the Finnish discussion, of course there have been some mentions on the technological change, but mostly the analysis of politicians still bases on the old industrial structures and emphasizing just the labor supply. But I'm quite sure that in coming years also this topic, this threat of technological unemployment and technological change will come to the Finnish basic income discussion, and when that happens I think we have more reliable scientific results on basic income too. I will finish my presentation here, but I guess you may have some interesting questions for me. Thank you.